you, Douglas. Thanks. You've been so, Douglas has been so wonderful in setting these things up. Oh, wait, hold it. Can you see him? Do you see the fox?
No.
No,
I don't know if you, nobody's saying anything.
lift up the screen a little bit, Lonnie.
I don't know if you can see the fox.
No, you can't. You lift up.
There he is. He's by the bush.
Lift up your computer.
What?
There he is.
Okay.
Lift up a little bit more. Okay.
Oh, there he is. Oh, there he goes. There he goes.
Oh, yes. Wow.
There he goes.
Recorded for posterity.
For posterior, right, like rolls in tubes. Okay, so.
That's awesome.
Sorry. So you see, it's, anyway. So right before the recording, I was telling a fox and turkey story. But anyway, I'm sorry. There he goes. Oh, he's looking. I left out some salmon skin earlier so that he could have a little. I'm trying to get it so that he doesn't want to eat turkey. I'm trying, so he gets a taste for something else. Oh, he won't leave. Anyway, so well, thank you. Good afternoon. And thank you for tuning in once again. I'd like to thank Douglas for arranging all of our technical aspects of these broadcasts. And this is the third in a series of artist interviews that we've been conducting over the series of weeks, where we've invited the judges for our Bay Area Currently exhibition to choose an artist of their choice to interact with in order to achieve greater depth and understanding of the works that were contributed for our online exhibition. And I urge all of you that if you haven't had an opportunity to enjoy the Bay Area Currently exhibition, to go over to our website at the PhotoAlliance.org and take a look at the over 30 contributors that the jurors found worthy of presentation or so. These were picked out of literally hundreds of entrants that were submitted by nearly 200 participants. So this was a very, very difficult job for the jurors, but they've all selected these individuals. This week, we have Binh Danh, who's gonna interview Anna Rotty for just a few moments, and Anna will share some of her work with us so that we can all enjoy the depth, complexity, and sensitivity of this work. While I'm here right now, I'd like to remind all of you that we may be gathering again in January for a closing. I don't know if you all can hear me. You've all been in the same position for the past 5 minutes.
We can hear you.
You're not moving. I don't know if am I being recorded at all? Oh, good, okay. Okay. Next month, we'll have a closing of the Bay Area Currently. And I'd also like to remind you that we will have future events. The PhotoAlliance will be having future international lecture series. It will be sponsoring in a forum much like this, in addition to other spring events that we'll keep you apprised of, so that if you continue to follow us on Facebook or the Instagram, or go to our website, we'll be able to keep you apprised of future events. So with that, oh shoot, I've got to move this thing around. Darn it. So with that, I'm being serious. That was my serious voice. So with that, I'd like to introduce Binh, who earned his BFA from San Jose University and an MFA from Stanford University. His awards include a Eureka Fellowship from the Fleischaker Foundation in San Francisco, and recently a 2019 Creative Work Fund collaborating with the Visual and Performing Art Department at the California State University.
Okay, you're breaking up. You are all broken up.
Okay, thank you, Lonnie.
His work has been collected. I'm not done yet. His work has been collected by the Fine Arts Museum.
Are they fighting with each other?
Somebody muted me. Sorry. I got one sentence. His work has been collected by the Fine Art Museums of San Francisco, the Museum of Fine Art in Boston, the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., and the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, and the San Jose Museum of Art, among many others. He's an assistant professor presently at the San Jose University. So, Mr. Bean?
Oh, thank you. So that's
Take
my
over.
cue. Oh,
That's
there
your
it
cue.
is.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I love your long
thank you.
pauses. I wasn't sure when to take over. Thank you, everybody, so much for
Sorry.
joining us.
My technical thing is so bad, and I can't. Oh, well, anyway.
No,
I'll
I love
be
it.
done now.
It's between like
The fox
super
is back.
professionalism to like totally disastrous. I just love it. I just love it. Okay, well, so thank you so much for joining us. And today I have the pleasure of talking to Anna Rotty. So first I want to just even start out by just thanking Douglas, behind the scene with the Zoom technical stuff. And of course, Chris and Anne for their, collaboration on this jury process. I also want to just mention that, PhotoAlliance, it's such a wonderful organization. And I just love, first when I learned about PhotoAlliance, just even the word alliance is so much in the mission of the name of the organization. Other photo organizations kind of announce that their photography or where they are, but Alliance, it's just in the community of what we do as photographers. We share processes and techniques and ideas with each other. So today I have the pleasure of talking to Anna Rotty. So Oakland-based artist Anna Rotty received a BFA in photography from the University of Massachusetts Amherst in 2011. Since 2017, she has been part of the San Francisco Artist Studio Collective and a co-founder of the Work in Progress Bay Area, an arts discussion and critique group geared to bring together individuals practicing activism through creative outlets and promoting collaboration and support through the arts. She has recently exhibited at PhotoPlace Gallery, Incline Gallery, San Francisco Camerawork, and UMass Amherst. Her work has been featured online with Juxtapoz, Humble Art Foundation, The Racket, and the Curated Fridge. Community and collaboration is an important part of Anna's practice. She is currently working as a poll worker coordinator for the San Francisco Department of Elections. So Anna, are you still working as a poll worker?
No, not so. That might be a little outdated. But I was, so I've worked the past 6 elections, but this year I worked from August through November. So helping hire poll workers and staffing the city of San Francisco with poll worker staff, and then some post-election like manual tallying and stuff like that. So
Great.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We will look at some of those work in a moment here too. So I'm gonna actually gonna run the slide presentation on my end, and I'm gonna try that now. So here, so okay, I'm gonna start the slide. All right. So do you see the slide, folks? Do you see the slide? And you see? Okay, great. I guess and I have your. I'm able to see you too, which is important here. Okay, so we can just talk about 4 projects today, and hopefully, hopefully you can enlighten us about your method. And first, I just want to just start off by saying too that when I was doing the jury, I think your work just really jumped out to me because of its landscape sensibility, to the work you submitted with. And then once I dig deeper onto your website, I was very impressed with the other bodies of work too, that I just, again, it's always exciting to learn about another artist's work, especially now having the opportunity just to talk to them. So Anna, this is the first project I wanted to talk about is the one called phosphine. And let me even, let me show the click there. There we go. I was wondering, could you just even read your artist statement
Yeah,
here?
sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. And just want to say thank you to PhotoAlliance and to all the jurors, Anne and Chris and Lonnie and Douglas. Yeah, everything you're doing has been amazing, and it's been really fun the past couple weeks to sit in and hear about someone else's work too. So thanks for having me. Yeah, and so phosphine, this is a project that I started in 2018. I guess I'll just read this. In phosphine, I investigate the experience of contemplation and isolation. I attempt to understand the difficulty of turning oneself inward in reflection and introspection in our current world. I explore the difficulty of inhabiting all our human multitudes in the vulnerable presence of one another, and aim to demonstrate the limitations, possibilities, and liberation found within the solitude of darkness.
Well, great. And I didn't know this word, phosphine, and I had to look it up. So I have the definition here, ring or spot of light produced by pressure on the eyeball or direct stimulation of the visual system other than by light. I thought that was so beautiful just to have this word now part of my vocabulary, and that's what you try to illustrate here, right, with these photographs. Do you want to just tell us what we're looking at? And
yeah, so these are small. They're intimately sized, about 5 by 5 inches. They're cyanotypes that are contact printed, so digital photographs. And you make a like contact size negative and expose the cyanotype directly in sunlight, and then they develop in water. And I toned them in yerba mate to give it, so normally cyanotypes are like a bright blue color, but I toned them in yerba mate and was experimenting a lot with different toners at a residency called Maker Circle in North Carolina that I went to. And that's where I learned this process. And I just love the like tactility of it and combining analog and digital processes in this way. Yeah, I think the black color just felt like it was achieving the idea a bit better than the bright blue, this like kind of dark, kind of like smoky, dreamy space.
I mean, they do have a quality of platinum palladium printing too. And I was curious, have you tried that method?
I haven't, no, I'd love to.
Yeah, it's the downfall is really kind of on the expensive side of, the cyanotype is always the introduction to alt processes. So these are pictures of folks kind of like in the state of sleeping or meditation or contemplation with their eyes closed. Do you want to talk a little bit more about why they're posed this way?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about how like our relationship to one another and how we can access all of the different multitudes of what it's like to be human, but in the presence of another person, and thinking about like the role of the camera and what an observer plays in someone's own like experience of reflection or introspection. So it's kind of just trying to test the boundaries and the possibilities, and asked people, mostly my family members, to like sit and kind of close their eyes and try to escape into a memory, or I guess try to become less aware of my presence. That's how it started. And then I ended up doing so there's a self-portrait in here too, because I felt like it was important for me to, if I'm asking other people to do this, to experience it myself as well.
Is this
yeah,
the one
that
here?
one's mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And how was that for you to also experience this moment of darkness, I guess?
It was difficult. I mean, it took a really long time. I think even the post like production, so after I take the photograph, I do quite a bit of editing in Photoshop, like to give it this kind of like receding into darkness effect. And it's sort of like that in the original image, but I enhance it a bit. And then, so it's a lot of like looking at it for a long time and thinking, kind of spending a lot of time in this space. So I wanted that effect to come out in the final images too. And I installed them once in a room that was really dimly lit so that people had to get really close and spend time with it and almost like have your own eyes adjust to it as you're viewing the image.
And because they're small prints here, right? In a way, they're 5 by 5 inches. Yeah, yeah. Well, I was very taken by this series when I saw it on your website, and the first thing that came to mind for me was this this first, as some of you already know, this picture by Hippolyte Bayard, in contemplation here. Of course, as you all know, he staged his photograph because he didn't get recognition from the French government for inventing a photographic process is direct positive print. So it's considered one of the first, kind of conceptual photography in a way. But I had thought that this series that you did had such a connection to 19th century aesthetic in a way. And the daguerreotype too. This is a Southworth and Hoggs daguerreotype of Albert Southworth. And then they were considered the first photographic artists, of America in a way. This piece here, and I was taken by the some of these portraits you have the participant without their shirt on. It kind of reminds me of the body. Other are kind of clothed, but the head is really what you're emphasizing, and I just thought that was quite magical. And one other reference I was thinking about too was very early daguerreotypes before the invention of using other halogen to speed up the process. This is a Henry Figs Jr. self-portrait, 1839, where those early daguerreotypes, to make a portrait, people were asked to close their eyes because they had to do it in direct sunlight, which is, for 5 to 10 minutes. And so imagine that. And there was no apparatus to hold their head. So they're asked to just close their eyes. And again, you're hearkening back to these early developments. So I was wondering if the work of, Julian, Margaret, and Cameron has any effect on you.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about it directly, but I think all of these images and the history of it have an impact on what I'm thinking about. And I think what you mentioned, the slowness and having to, like back then, having to sit for that long just to record this moment, that really resonates, because I think it's something that's more difficult for us to do now. And it was challenging to like have 5 minutes of this escape, or like, I don't know if it's an escape or if it's like focus. But yeah, that's something that just thinking about how the world is different now and how we think about time comes up a lot.
Because for the participant, the slowness is within themselves and their mind when they're closing the eye. But you, on the other end, could be just taking pictures, and I'm sure you mentioned these were done on a cell phone, and I'm sure there was a couple exposure was made. So it wasn't, the limitation wasn't because of the technology as in the 19th century folks. It was due just the conceptual direction you were giving.
Yeah. Sorry, they weren't on a cell phone, but but they were. I think another project, yeah. But yeah, definitely. Like, I'm moving quickly and considering all of these things while the other collaborator is having a different experience, or I'm sure that I'm influencing them as I'm moving around them and making it difficult to like fully escape into their own introspection.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of the slide you sent me here of the completed project. Let's move on to the work you apply with here, Tara. And maybe you can maybe just start by just the title of the series here.
Yeah, I think I just wanted a simple title that referenced earth and landscape, so that it was open enough for people to interpret what they wanted out of it. Yeah, so I came across Terra and liked the simplicity of it.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about
Yeah,
these.
so I started these probably in April, around the beginning of quarantine, and I was thinking about how can I alter the space that I'm in. So having been spending a lot more time at home and not really venturing out much like many of us, I was thinking about like what it's like to be in an interior space and thinking about the outside and how can I expand the small space that I'm in through imagery. So I started playing with reflections and light, and I would like set up these scenes when the light would come in the front window of our apartment, like the sunlight comes in and kind of moves across the living room. So I was using like certain times of day, and kind of it became a ritual of just creating these constructed landscapes.
And the materials you're using, I mean, I think you mentioned fire blanket, like in this one here, right? Most of these
Yes.
have that.
Yeah, so most of
Prop.
them have this, I guess it's an emergency blanket or like a safety blanket, those thermal. And it's funny, I actually had it in my car for like 10 years, probably, just folded up in the
Wow.
center console. And I was thinking like, how can I create reflections, or how can I kind of abstract the space that I'm spending so much time in? Yeah, this is a good one for you to include, because this is sort of how it started, just like bouncing light that was coming in the window and creating these kind of, I guess I was thinking about how can we kind of manifest like emotions or what we're feeling, and thinking about invisibility, but like light and emotions, and even like the pandemic, this kind of like invisible force that was moving through and having such an impact.
And you mentioned the pandemic, and this work started because of sheltering in place. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah. So these are all shot in my apartment.
And this one here too. I'm sorry if I cut you off there, Anne. I mean,
No, go ahead.
I know, just because we live through. I mean, we're living right now through the pandemic. It seems like we kind of finished the fire season. I don't know. There's still fire raging throughout California, but this one here just was just so spooky to see. The reflection of that glowing red. And plus of all, it's a fire safety blanket too, and I was just curious, like, how did this all kind of, did your mind kind of go to fire when you're thinking about staging something like this, or something, something like this here too, where it's just that glowing orange sky or red sky that we have been seeing?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of them are influenced by bigger events that were happening around us. So, being in Northern California, and these were around the time of the fires, just like thinking about those colors that we're seeing, and like the quality of the air, and this like danger that feels like it's all around, but also I'm in my house and kind of like protected by it. So yeah, definitely influenced by these bigger events.
Yeah.
And I think they sort of
yeah
changed like as time and different events were going on. Like I think different things kind of came up in the work, whether I was necessarily intending it or not.
Yeah, and for me too, just looking at the work, and I love like, that's the reason why I love just teaching and looking at work in general. We all do as photographers, because it recalls like other work that previously in the past. For me, when I saw this was on your Instagram page or something like that, so I took a screenshot of it. But then it reminds me of this Imogene Cunningham picture, of a bed, an unmade bed, 1957. And I'm curious about like these sort of like, I mean, I just find it magical that this series kind of started in a bed itself, and the bed becomes a landscape. And I mean, I was wondering about maybe some of like when did landscape kind of became something for you, in a way. Was it like a childhood moment? I know you grew up in, Massachusetts.
Mhm.
So obviously a little bit of different landscape than Northern California, or the same, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I think I've always like photographed the landscape and been I guess inspired just by like walking through the landscape, or like I grew up camping a lot, and I think about like California compared to Massachusetts feels like so huge, like it's just so vast and there's such extremes. So I was thinking about that in this. I've never really, I guess the way that I've used landscape in past work has been more like collecting images to kind of insert in different projects that become abstracted in some way. And I wouldn't consider myself like a landscape photographer. I'm much more like constructing spaces like this, or I have done a lot of like projecting into my home and thinking about like bringing the external world inside. And yeah, I think like this is definitely, I think this is more inspired by like growing up on the ocean in Massachusetts, like rocks and like waves feeling so close to us, and like coming right up to the harbors and kind of like being really close to your eye level, and almost like this submersion into the water.
Yeah, and of course the word I want to use is the sublime in a way. How do you think about that with your work?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm always kind of trying to find sublime, like this, I guess the sublime or something magical, kind of between reality and imagination. So the process of making these feels really like therapeutic and meditative for me, and like I'm kind of just coming up with answers to questions that I have as I'm doing it, or this kind of meditative, like therapeutic process.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I do consider you in a way a landscape photographer, even though you don't do it traditionally, and it's that tradition of landscape photography is always constantly changing. But there's I mean, in a way, you are constructing a landscape. And even if I go back and think about these photographers in the past, they also are constructing a landscape. They're constructing it, in the land itself, in their viewfinders, but they're putting things together in ways by composition, and you are also putting things together, obviously constructing things, and also by composition. And do any other sort of landscape photographer comes to your mind when you're composing these scenes?
I mean, definitely like you had Ansel Adams in there, of course.
Yeah.
I think like, yeah, some of the viewpoints, like I'm thinking about how can I create a range in viewpoint, or like where is the viewer in this space?
Yeah. It the one thing that really jumps out on me too, just looking at the series, is that I feel like they're so telephoto in a way, that they're
Mm.
the focal length you're using, it's you know, there's really kind of like no grounding in a way, but there's always like this like this scene here, you know, like it's just like the peak of a mountain, you know, which is this almost I recall reading something when I was trying to do research on your work about you know, attending church. Is that right? I don't know if you could recap some of that.
Yeah, I think so I did a call and response collaboration with another artist this fall, where we would she would send me a photo and I would respond to her work, and we kind of went back and forth, and a lot of what we were thinking about was kind of this like emotional or like spiritual quality, which hasn't really been a part of my life in like recent years. But yeah, as a kid, like I would go to church, and I just remember like staring up at the ceiling and kind of like counting like the mosaics or like the stained glass, and thinking about like this time when you're really just listening and kind of almost like forced to just sit there and absorb information, or just like the space around you. Yeah, I think like that's where the kind of looking up at the sky and like and out at something, just kind of playing with perspective, and even like dreaming about being somewhere else. So like a kind of having a reverie, or when you're in one space but you're thinking about something bigger, something, recalling a different landscape.
Well, this landscape here is definitely not California, and I mean it's more this northern light, or you know, aurora. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like this is more like a wintry scene, which I guess I was thinking about how we interpret time, and since moving to California, I've always thought of the year as like a line, versus when I was living in Massachusetts, it's like a circle of like seasons kind of break up time in a different way. And I think I was trying to like force a shift in time by coming up with different seasons, or kind of like pushing something that I'm seeing in my immediate surroundings, but kind of combining it with an emotion of like a different season, or something that generates a feeling of change, or like moving forward.
Well, just for the sake of time and moving forward, we'll jump into this next series, which I find very fascinating as well. Heading to more portraiture work, or you know, figurative work, I guess put it that way. You know, so this is American Doom, right? This is and this obviously it's Donald Trump, and I think this picture is called what's it called here? It's called Toxic Gesture, Toxic Gesture Study.
Mhm.
Tell us about that title.
Yeah. Well, so this is a series that I've been working on since 2016. And I take news imagery, or actually this is a fairly old photograph, but it resurfaced in the news around the like Jeffrey Epstein story. And I was just thinking about like Trump's gestures, and like the consequences that come from actions of men in positions of power, and the kind of creating these like monstrous reactions to them. And so these are they're photographs, and I manipulate them digitally in Photoshop, so like the backgrounds and adding these kind of bright colors and all of that. But then it's printed on a paper that resists the ink, so it actually like sits on the surface of the paper. And I do that because I'm thinking about how things change over time, or like how much control we have versus what's out of our control. And it like allows dust and hairs to fall into them, and then I'll like wash them, and parts of it, the ink will fall out, like in this image. The hair and like the suit, the color has washed away, just kind of leaving a stain.
Hmm. And I threw this image in here by a Gary Winogrand photograph of just the news media. Here's, JF Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, giving a speech, but the perspective is from the TV that's behind him playing. So talk about your relationship to news media or media in general, I guess, but particularly political
Yeah.
media.
Well, I think these started as a way of processing like these major events that were happening that kind of felt very much influential on all of us, but also disconnected. So, like thinking about where we fit into these like spaces that are supposed to be representative, or people that are supposed to be representing the people. And then I think it more evolved into just a reaction of like people abusing their power or and the consequences involved. But I mean, I find them like kind of humorous, like this one especially. It's kind of absurd, and like just this moment that like we can all kind of laugh at because it's just so ridiculous. And I don't know, I think I also want to take it and that moment and pull it into something like physical, and then be able to sit with it and see how it changes over time, because we're so like inundated with imagery on our phones. Like a news article pops up and then it disappears, and like we move on to the next thing so quickly. So I kind of like having these sit in the studio for a really long time and see like, was that moment even significant, or was it like, I don't know, just this like kind of flashy, like, I don't know, it's almost like celebrity.
Yeah, I mean, politics is very celebrity now, of course, with Donald Trump and, celebrity politician in a way. I just realized I've been neglecting the chat because it's a little bit hard to multitask, but we will go through some of these questions. So these are really great questions at the moment, and have the audience jump in too. But I want to just talk about like the choice of the formal choices in way you made between some of these, and like, this is obviously the color palette, and why these really kind of lush colors.
Yeah, so I think that's something that evolved the longer I did this project, and kind of as I like understood what its purpose was for me. But I usually do several versions of the images, mostly because they don't all survive. Like things will fall into them, or the ink will pool up in different ways, and I really can't control everything about them. So I'll do a few different versions. But I guess about the color, I just kind of wanted to exaggerate the absurdity of it, or like the poppiness of these images. And I'm not sure, I think like when it's all seriousness, it has less of an impact in a way, because I'm thinking about how quickly we can move on from something. So I pulled these colors from like the Instagram logo, and just thinking about like how we're experiencing imagery, and kind of like inserting that kind of, I don't know, social media into these like very real and consequential moments.
Yeah, and I pulled this from your Instagram feed here. This is Rudy Giuliani here, and of course we all recognize the event. And this process you did was kind of perfect combination to this news feed here. I also like this one here. Again, I was just thinking about the horror shower scenes, especially through cinema, Psycho and It here was two I was able to pull up. But tell us a little bit about your Instagram too. I mean, I think these are very popular on Instagram because the colors really, I mean, there are Instagram colors as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think I love that you put the shower scene with that, because yeah, I guess one thing about Instagram that I like is that you can kind of use it in ways that are relevant to what's happening around us. So like I posted that image soon before the election because I was thinking about like, these are really serious issues that have come up over the past few years. And if we can like use imagery to remember the consequences that can happen, or like the very real events or like policies that come out of our like voting, or who ends up in power. So I kind of like just tried to use it as a way to inspire people to vote.
Definitely do. I mean, something like this too, you know, this is a 2017 piece, the healthcare, of course, and then, and because these started in 2016, so I mean, it's been a process you've been doing for a while. And are you gonna carry it forward as the news change? I imagine.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I think like sometimes these feel like a chore to do, but I feel like I have to do them to kind of like complete a story. I guess I don't know yet. I'll see what happens and what I feel like, because the images that I use usually result in like in an emotion. So either like a sense of fear or anger, or like just kind of something that's so scary that I like can only laugh about it. So
Yeah,
I guess
feels at times when we're all being laughed at, you know, by politicians in ways. So, well, so we won't be laughed at. Let's talk about the election here. This work called Pool Work, which are these what years are these photographed here? Are they?
Yeah, so these range from probably 2017 or 2018 until this past election. So these are people that I've met working the elections, and I've photographed people just kind of casually as I've been working on election day. But this year I had more time to like meet a lot more people before the election and afterwards. So some of these more like staged images are paired with audio that I worked with a reporter from KALW, the public radio station in San Francisco, and we took audio recordings of these people. And I'm just interested in like why people are involved in elections and the back end of what makes democracy happen. And so much emphasis is on the political that I think a lot of the like work that just goes into making this happen, like it's such a huge production. And a lot of people, I think this year, a lot of people have started to understand like what goes into it. And, you know, we've heard a lot about voter fraud or lack of voter fraud. But yeah, I just became really interested in all of the like logistics that go into it and the people involved and why they're involved, and kind of wanted to tell their stories. Like Roman here has trained so many people that serve as poll workers and field election deputies, helping support the election in San Francisco. And they really do such an amazing job. And I think a lot of people are coming from places that don't have democracy in the way that we do, or have experienced much different I guess political systems that aren't fair for everyone, and they're just really working to make free and fair elections. And I just think it's really important. I'm like super passionate about it, and I could talk about it forever, but they just really inspire me.
Yeah, and of course you're also interested in the kind of the staging of an election too. I find that fascinating. The duct tapes, the cables, the electrical cable, you know, all that but that goes into just setting up the scene of what we do in the democracy.
Yeah, definitely.
So why don't we shift gear and open it up to the audience here? I'm gonna actually go back to the chat feed and just make sure I don't miss any questions before. Okay. Anne asks, what is the dilution of the yerba mat?
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, the
for
yerba
this series
mate.
here. Yerba mate.
So I really have just done it like how you would make coffee. So like about, I don't know, a cup of yerba mate or half a cup to like 10 cups of water. Yeah, it's pretty.
And that's
strong.
coffee. Okay.
Well, I have done coffee, but the yerba mate is what gives the like black kind of charcoaly color. Coffee gives more of a like warmer toned brown. Green tea actually gives kind of a like purpley tone. So yeah, I love like all different types of teas are fun to experiment with. I just happen to like the yerba mate the best.
Well, Renee asked, what's producing the colors? Let me see, Renee. What's creating the clouds and colors? I think we talked a little bit about the reflection, but let's talk more about the.
Sure, yeah. So that's the way that the light's coming into this is reflecting onto the emergency blanket. So in the foreground there, that gray area is the emergency blanket. And when light hits that, it bounces up onto things around it. So in this case, I had like a roll of paper behind it. And then there's objects that I put on the other side of it to kind of block the light or like either allow it to cast up and reflect or kind of control the direction that it's bouncing in. But that's the reflection going onto the paper.
And then are these color lights too in cases that you produce different like tones or?
Yeah, so I've used different materials, like just pieces of transparency film that are different colors.
Okay.
Or I'll use like almost like prisms. Yeah, like thick pieces of plastic that kind of break up the light in different ways. So it's a lot of just experimenting and like moving different lights around and a combination of natural light and these like LED lights that I have that are just white, but so any color is coming from something being put in between the light and the actual reflection.
And Alex asked about the scale of these work.
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I've made prints of them, I like them to be big because I really want you to be able to step into it ideally. But in my house, like the size that I'm working with is probably like within a 2 to 5 foot area.
Well, Bozina, I hope I'm saying that correctly. I find the image of the landscape created within a home very appealing. The pandemic has distanced us not only from other people, but also deprive us of the possibility of visiting new places. And so you created these places inside. Thank you so much for that comment. Somebody, Scott mentioned that can you please send the one of Lindsey Graham to Nancy Pelosi? So that's right, that's Lindsey Graham there, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So you have a lot of thanks and yeah. So why don't I actually just even stop lastly, I'll put this in the chat box there. This is Anna's website here. But I'm gonna stop the screen share so we can actually see each other. And if you would like to unmute your mic and how do I stop screen share? There we go. Exit. Okay. If you'd like to unmute your mic and talk directly to Anne, please do. Yeah, Anna, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I really enjoyed like the context that you were giving some of that work with the historic images and everything. So thank you for putting that together.
Thanks for making wonderful work. So any thoughts in common? And please unmute yourself.
Victor's trying to talk there. Victor, you're muted. Still muted.
Oh, Linda, did you?
Poor Victor. We'll get back to Victor. I just want to say that I think your work is very exciting in the various ways that it goes. It seems very committed in each of them, and it's surprising they're coming out of one person. You're very expansive in your creativity and your commitment and figuring out technically how to do these things. And I saw the 5 pictures you submitted, and I'm so thankful for Binh to digging deeper into your website and seeing the wealth that you've produced. And I'm sorry, I was not particularly familiar with your work, and I just think it's thrilling, and I want to thank you.
Thanks, Linda. I appreciate that.
Really?
Yeah, it definitely sometimes feels all over the place, but I tend to work on a lot of different series at the same time over a long period of time. And yeah, I'm just interested in a lot of different approaches. So
Yeah, some people
Thank
get
you.
confused by that, but you seem to stay on track. So bravo.
thank you.
You're welcome. Victor, unmute
Yeah.
yourself.
I
Okay.
have.
All right.
Okay. Now, Anna, I had seen some of your earlier pieces where you had mushed around the image and where the ink did not necessarily adhere in the usual manner to the paper. And those were not political. And then there was a transition to using that. And I'm curious about how you made that transition.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was doing that process with more images of actually like people sleeping and mostly like thinking about memory. But I felt like it wasn't the best approach for that series, and I was still interested in experimenting with that process. And I think the political seemed to make the most sense conceptually because it became more about how we're processing information and how we have control or lack of control in a situation, and how something can change over time. So I started to do it just with that, like found imagery and thinking more about appropriation.
Good, a good move, I think. It
Thank
uses
you.
it. Previously, it didn't seem used. It seemed a matter of pure experiment. And now it seems like you've made it into something.
Thanks. Yeah. I think like a lot of times things can start as an experiment and then it kind of shows up in different ways as an idea evolves. And yeah, there's definitely, I think about what approach is best for what idea and kind of how the process can play into the concept. So thanks for picking up on that.
Good move.
Any other thoughts and questions?
I could say one. Could I?
Yeah,
Hi,
Heather,
Heather.
please.
Hi. And I'll do a call out to Reed too. I remember, I'll let you know, Anna, that one of the first times you showed, as Victor was mentioning, some of your early experimentation with the ink smearing on the paper. I think you were working, your idea then was taking photos only off of Instagram. So you had some piece of your thought that you knew it was about this kind of mediation that was happening through like communication tools, but for sure, I think where you landed was a really powerful combination of the idea with that material and that process. And I remember Reed Estabrook actually pulling me aside after one of those critiques and being like, that woman, Anna, her work is really good. Keep an eye on her. I was like, yeah, I know.
Thanks, Reed. Yeah, and that's what's so awesome about having critiques like at Camerawork, or I did a portfolio review through PhotoAlliance, and it's so helpful to have feedback and like see where what other people are seeing in work, and just like talking about it kind of helps.
Yeah. But I really wanted to say that the thing that's really resonating with me with the new landscape work, I love all the bodies of work. And it's same with the portraits too, is that during the time of this pandemic, at least for me personally, there's a lot of struggle to understand where our consciousness is, especially because all of our normal ways of interacting, internal and external world, have been fractured and contained and controlled and limited. And I feel that you really, really hit on a resonant tone with those landscapes and the familiarity that they have, and then also the strangeness that they have. For me, that really hits, at least for me, the personal experience I've had of noticing how my own thinking has changed in my relationships and my general consciousness. And I'm just really impressed that you can use such simple materials, and to Bin's point, we will label them as landscapes in the broadest terms of those words, and yet create something that absolutely hits me on a level that's very much about humanity and the experience during this time. So kudos to that.
Thanks, Heather.
Beautiful. Thanks, Heather. All right. Any other thoughts? Anything you'd like to register? Okay. Well, let me go to the other screen just making sure no one's raising their hand or want to jump in. Well, okay. Well, I think this is a good time to maybe let you know that we'll stay on, and Anna and I will stay on, and Douglas, until everybody leaves. So feel free to log off if you like.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the last in this series. And, but like I said, please don't hesitate to visit the website or the Instagram site to keep apprised of future events and our closing gathering that's going to happen around this particular event in January. So we'll, send out email postings in the future. But, thanks once again to everyone for coming, and thanks for navigating over. I'd like to thank all of you who contributed and posted in the chat for all of your thoughtful and interesting comments. So, and both of you, thank you again so much for participating in this particular event, and all of those people that that found themselves contributing. Thank you all again. Thanks Ben, thanks Anna, and we'll see you.
Thank
you, Lonnie.
All right, everyone. What a great
Thank you, Heather.
community. Yeah, terrific. Terrific.
Great. Thanks, Linda.
All right, we're done.
Hi, Victor.
Bye,
Bye.
Linda. Good
Bye.
to see you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, Victor.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
Heather.
Bye,
Bye.
Heather.
Bye.
Bye, Anna.
Thanks,
Bye,
Doug.
Heather. Bye, Heather.
Reed.
Okay, how do I get out of this thing?
Great.
Oh, well, take
Hey,
care.
Reed.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Reed.
Anna.
Good to see you. You got a tree up. Good for you.
Yep, we do. I want real trees, but my wife likes easy trees.
Need to do it.
I see. Mhm.
Right here.
Anna, I have a question for you about your experience in North Carolina at Maker Circle.
Yeah.
I know Susan Patrice.
Oh,
And,
Susan's amazing.
So how did that go for you?
It was great. Yeah, so I didn't know Susan before I went. I just kind of like applied on a whim, and then we got talking, and I just went out there for 10 days, I think. And that's really how I learned making digital negatives. Susan is amazing with digital negatives. and we did Van Dyke brown printing and cyanotype and all the toning. And then since then, have you been involved in the 6 Feet project at all?
I'm aware of it, but I'm not involved.
Okay.
I've snuck around the website, but I have not been involved.
Yeah. Well, they do great practice groups, and I've been involved in a couple of those with Susan and some other people, and it's just a great community. But yeah, Susan's wonderful.
How long? You were out there for 10 days, you said.
Mhm.
And when was this? When did you do it?
It was, it must have been August 2018.
Okay, a couple years ago. Okay, all right. Thank you. Great work. Great work.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, thanks, Ree.
Yo, nice to see you all.
Yeah,
Good to
hope
see you,
catch
Ree.
you after this whole pandemic thing. So, you know,
Well, I've been retired for 5 years, so
I know that, but I like to see you around.
very much different now.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, Ree. Great. Well, that's great. I think it went pretty